Hi BookTube, my name is Juan. I am just one reader, and today I will be wrapping up the 8 books that I read in July and August. I am combining July and August, so I won't go into a lot of detail just because this video would be endless and very long. So let's just get started right away. The first book that I finished in July was Mort by Terry Pratchett. Before reading this book, I had read many years ago The Color of Magic, which is the first book in the Discworld universe or series by Terry Pratchett. And the impression that I had from reading that book was not a very favorable one. It was not a good one. I distinctly remembered not loving, not clicking, not vibing with Terry Pratchett's writing style or characters or plots or world or sense of humor. Sometimes the humor was good, but it was just a weird experience for me. So I didn't think I would read any other books by Terry Pratchett, but I had heard recently from some booktubers who read fantasy, like Alan from the Library of Alexandria, Jimmy from the Fantasy Network, or Daniel Green, big names in fantasy booktube, had really enjoyed Mort. So I picked it up and I was so disillusioned, so disappointed, and so disenchanted. Now that I have tried more Terry Pratchett, I know that he's just not for me. I will not be reading any more Terry Pratchett ever again. He's just not for me. I can appreciate maybe, the qualities, the features that make him an attractive stylist or an attractive author or voice for many readers, but he's just not for me. I thought this book was frankly horrible, frankly just messy and terrible. I'm all for satire and good fun and comedy and, whimsical, nonsensical shenanigans. But this, I just found it very poorly done. I found it slightly tacky, actually. Like, that's a very strong word. And it's maybe not a very valid word in this context because it's a personal taste issue. But I really found it just not for me. Boring. The sense of humor was sort of good sometimes, but it was mostly off, and I don't even remember if I actually finished it. It was not good. I gave it like 1 star. Not for me. Then I read something really fantastic. I read the 4 novels in the Neapolitan series by Elena Ferrante. I have 3 here. The other one I lent out because I think these books should be read by every kind of reader out there. I think everybody would love something in these books. I think these books are so complex and so diverse and so layered that anyone could read them and find something in them to enjoy. So I have lent one out. That's why I don't have it in here. But I read all 4 of them within a span of maybe 3 weeks, maybe a little over 3 weeks. It was a very engaging, compelling, bingeable, addictive experience. I really enjoyed it. It was so wonderful. The first book, My Brilliant Friend, was probably my favorite one, but it's very hard for me to separate these books and think of each one individually because they really are just different stages of the same sprawling, almost epic feeling kind of story. My Brilliant Friend was my favorite one. I just loved the writing and the storytelling. It was sort of dark, especially the beginning of the book when we follow the childhood portion of the story. It was very dark and very Freudian, incredibly psychoanalytical, and I adored it. I adored this story. So the first one received 5 stars. The second one, The Story of a New Name, was more dramatic and more soap opera-ish, but I just really loved it. I became very invested and frustrated with these characters, and this story is just great. I gave this one, I think, 4 stars. Then I read the story, no, sorry, book number 3 is the one that I lent out, which is Those Who Leave and Those Who Stay. I really enjoyed that as well. Very dramatic, very, very dramatic. Loved it. 4 stars. And the last one, The Story of the Lost Child, which was the conclusion, received 4 stars as well. So the first one was the highlight for me. My Brilliant Friend was the only one who received 5 stars, but the entire story is so worth your time. It's so worth picking up and reading. You will absolutely feel immersed. If you don't like the kind of writing in these books by Elena Ferranti, I don't know how I can help you. I really don't think we will click. I think if you don't find these books at least interesting or immersive or textured or interestingly written, we are certainly not soulmates, or we just don't share the basic core of what reading is and can be. So I really loved the conclusion, and that was just a great experience overall reading the Neapolitan series. Then I think in the beginning of August, probably, I read Percy Jackson and the Olympians, the first book, which is The Lightning Thief, and it was a 3-star read. You know, I just wanted a palate cleanser, and that's what it was. It was okay. It was a little boring in some parts, and I didn't think the action scenes or the battle sequences and the big confrontations were compelling enough. If you compare this to Harry Potter, for example, or some other more interesting books within the same genre of YA, for example, the Bartimaeus trilogy by Jonathan Stroud, which is something that I'm always recommending to people, or the Artemis Fowl books by Owen Colfer, this one really sort of pales in comparison. It's not bad. It's funny, it's interesting, the Greek mythology aspect is interestingly delivered, but it's just not, it wasn't quite there yet. I probably will continue at some point with the series just to see where the story goes. This was okay. It was a little dull, but you know, it was fine. Then I read probably my favorite book of the year so far. And I just looking at the cover and thinking about it and remembering reading it makes me so happy. Underfoot in Show Business by Helene Hanff. Helene Hanff is my favorite nonfiction writer ever. She has a few books out, most notably or most famously 84 Charing Cross Road, but she has many other books that many people aren't aware of, and it's really a big, big shame and a pity because Helene Hanff is just delightful. I would describe the style as something like Gilmore Girls and something warm and cozy, but incredibly hilarious and charming and full of delight. It's incredibly charismatic. Her voice is so snarky and charismatic, and this particular book is her first ever published work. Underfoot in Show Business. It's very, very short, and it's one of those books where you just don't want to keep on reading because the book will be over and it will be gone. I wanted to spend more time with this book and with this author, reading these stories that are so charming that they actually feel like fiction. So this is nonfiction that reads very much like fiction. It's better than most fiction, honestly, in my opinion. It's just wonderful. Basically, in this, we follow Helene as she comes to New York City, Manhattan, and she starts, building a career or trying or struggling to find a career in show business. The stories that you will read in here are hilarious and warm and cozy and wacky and whimsical. If you can get a hold of this book, please, please, please try it. Anything by Helene Hanff, but this one was just absolutely 5 stars from the first chapter. And finally, the last book that I completed in August was a reread. And it is my favorite book of all time. It's The Neverending Story by Michael Ende. The Neverending Story is my favorite book. It has been my favorite book since I first read it when I was 9, 10, 11 years old. So it's a reread. I am not counting this as one of the best books that I have read this year, just because I feel like it's not fair. This is clearly my favorite book of all time. It's a very personal thing for me. It's a very personal match. It's one of those books that has always, resonated with me. So I can't really compare it to the rest of the books that I have read this year. So you will not see this in my top 10 books of the year at the end of the year, because it's not fair. But this book is the best thing ever. I legitimately believe that it's the best piece of fiction that's ever been written. It's so wonderful. It's so imaginative. It's so beautifully written. It's a simple but complex story about very deep, profound human issues and metaphysical issues, philosophical issues, the bigger questions in life. It's a book that is addressed to any kind of audience. It can be read by everybody and anybody. Children, young adults, adults, and old people. I think anyone would love this in some way for different reasons. So I read that, and now let me just, this is not really part of the wrap-up because I haven't finished, but I want to show you or share with you the 2 books that I started at the end of August and that I will finish in September. So the first one is 11/22/63 by Stephen King. This book is almost 1,000 pages long. I am on page like 300, so I'm getting there. I'm just very, very busy at the moment. I've been very, very busy, so I will probably finish this the first week of September. And the other book that I started reading, and it also will be one of my favorite books at the end of the year, I'm telling you right away, is The Hidden Spring by Mark Solms. This is nonfiction. It's neuroscience and psychoanalysis combined. Essentially, what Mark Solms is doing in this book is presenting a lot of research, new research, scientific evidence of why psychoanalysis from Freud's, the early stages of psychoanalytical thinking from Freud himself were true and are now confirmed with scientific evidence. He discovered the mechanisms, the neurological mechanisms of dreaming. He also discovered the true source of human consciousness. This book should win like some sort of prize. I think Mark Solms should win some kind of Nobel Prize. I'm not kidding. He has completely shattered many points of view in neuroscience and some other forms of theories of the mind, and he has now confirmed with scientific evidence many of Freud's original findings, which were discovered with inference, and he has come back to the conclusion that psychoanalysis really is the best tool that we have trying to understand the human mind and the human emotion, the human experience. And this is basically a scientific explanation of why that is. So those are the books that I finished in July and August. Very, very good 2 months for me. And yeah, I look forward to another wrap up. So I will catch you in the next video. Thanks for watching.